On a cold Welsh evening in 1974, the hills above Berwyn seemed to answer the sky with a flash so violent that people miles away thought the world had split open. What fell there, and why did so many witnesses remember the same impossible moment? The Berwyn Range is not a place that invites attention. It is quiet, steep and remote, the kind of landscape where weather, rock and distance can turn small events into legends. Yet on that night, the mountains drew every eye. To understand the mystery, you have to picture rural North Wales in the early 1970s, where radio chatter, local gossip and official silence could travel side by side. In places like this, a strange light in the sky never stays just a light for long. The first reports did not arrive as a single neat statement. They came as fragments, from people who felt a shock, heard a roar, or saw a brilliant object streak across the darkness. Long before anyone named the incident, the story was already spreading. Some accounts placed the event around the same time as a small earthquake, and that detail changed everything. If the ground moved and the sky flashed together, was this a falling body, a local tremor, or something harder to classify? The coincidence of light and shaking gave the case its lasting power. A meteor can blaze overhead, and an earthquake can rumble below, but when the two seem to meet in one remote mountain valley, the imagination starts searching for a third explanation. Local people described a sense that something had fallen, burned or broken apart in the hills. That feeling mattered because it turned the event from a sky sighting into a search for impact, debris, and a place where the earth itself might have been marked. In the days that followed, the mountains were combed by curiosity as much as concern. Witnesses compared notes, and each retelling seemed to sharpen the same question. If something came down here, why was nothing obvious found? That missing wreckage became one of the case's most unsettling features. A brilliant descent should leave a trail of fragments, scorch, or at least a clear location. Yet Berwyn offered only scattered impressions and a growing sense of uncertainty. The official record also matters here, because the incident sits at the edge of what was reported and what was remembered. Some details were logged, others were repeated second-hand, and the distance between them is where the mystery deepens. One of the most compelling details is the timing. A sudden flash, a loud report, and a tremor-like sensation all appearing within the same narrow window gives the event a precision that feels difficult to dismiss. Another detail is the geography itself. Berwyn is remote enough that a falling object could be seen by many, yet recovered by few, with ridges, valleys, and poor visibility offering the perfect conditions for a vanishing act. Then there is the human pattern of the reports. Different witnesses did not describe a neat textbook meteor. They spoke of brightness, force, and a sense that the event was closer and stranger than a simple streak of light. For supporters of the extraordinary interpretation, that combination is hard to ignore. A light in the sky is one thing, but a light tied to ground shock, local disruption, and a search that found too little can feel like the outline of a larger encounter. The case also lives in the memory of a broader era, when Britain saw a steady stream of strange aerial reports and official interest in unusual phenomena. Berwyn fit that moment perfectly, rural, ambiguous, and impossible to forget once heard. As the story spread, so did the idea that something may have been retrieved or quietly examined. That claim has never settled into a universally accepted record, but it remains one of the reasons the incident refuses to fade. Skeptical readings begin with the sky itself. A bright meteor can fragment, explode, and create both light and sound, while a small earthquake can happen nearby by coincidence, making two separate events feel like one extraordinary event. That explanation is not trivial, because Wales does sit within a region where tremors are possible, and rural witnesses often experience distance, darkness, and echo in ways that compress events together. Memory can fuse separate shocks into a single dramatic scene. Yet even with that in mind, the Berwyn reports still leave an uneasy residue. The event was vivid enough to be remembered, but elusive enough to resist tidy confirmation, and that is exactly where the strongest mysteries survive. What was seen in the sky may have been natural, but the emotional weight of the night came from how many people felt they had witnessed the same impossible crossing of fire and earth. That shared certainty is part of the evidence too. The most difficult question is not simply what fell, but why the story gathered so much force around a place that offered so few answers. Berwyn became a kind of empty center, where every explanation seemed to leave something behind. There are also the practical problems of distance and timing. In a remote landscape, a bright event can be seen from many angles at once, while the actual source remains hidden by terrain, weather, or the limits of what anyone could verify that night. That is why the case still invites two very different readings at once. One sees a dramatic natural event whose details were amplified by fear and memory. The other sees a glimpse of something that briefly touched the landscape and then disappeared. Neither reading fully closes the file because the strongest cases are rarely built from one perfect fact. They are built from a cluster of imperfect ones that seem to lean toward the same strange center. Berwyn's power lies in that cluster: the flash, the sound, the tremor, the remote hills, and the stubborn absence of a final, satisfying answer. Taken together, they create a mystery that feels larger than any single witness account. If the event was a meteor or a small quake, it was an unusually memorable convergence. If it was something else, the landscape kept its secret well, and the people who saw it were left with only fragments of the night. That is why the Berwyn Mountain incident still matters. It sits exactly where ordinary explanation begins to strain, and extraordinary possibility begins to breathe, just beyond the edge of certainty. Decades later, the mountain remains quiet, but the question has not gone quiet with it. Something was seen, something was felt, and something about that night still resists being filed away neatly. Maybe the answer belongs to the sky, maybe to the ground, or maybe to a moment when both seem to speak at once. Until the missing pieces are found, Berwyn stays exactly what it has always been: an open question on a dark mountain. The Berwyn story endures because it never settles into one clean category. It is part sky mystery, part earth mystery, and part human memory, all gathered around a remote Welsh ridge that still seems to hold its breath. And so the case remains suspended between explanation and wonder, with witnesses, records, and local memory all pointing toward something real, even if the full shape of it is still out of reach. In the end, Berwyn does not ask for belief so much as attention. Look closely enough, and the night still seems to contain a flash, a shock, and a silence that no single explanation has fully filled.